Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the authors of a new book that we have coming out. This is called Stop the Silence: Thriving After Child Sexual Abuse. Before I introduce these author experts to you today, I want to say a huge thank you to Dr. Pamela J. Pine, who is the lead author and the founder of the organization called Stop the Silence. Pam, thank you so much. We would not be here without you. Thank you for your mission and your passion, your dedication to this topic, and your relentless work and efforts and energy about it. We are very grateful for you and really, really honored. I know I'm speaking for myself and probably all of the authors, honored to be a part of this with you. So let me introduce you all to our authors today. Annie Kenny is a victim child safety advocate, divorce coach, and the founder of Bloom Consulting. I have LaQuisha Hall with me. She's the creative confidence coach behind Confident Canvas, where she empowers and educates many internationally through art on domestic violence and sexual abuse prevention. You guys, I'm going to get an award in bio reading sooner or later. So I'm just working it here. Leanne Hofer is the founder of the Happiness Architect, where you find the blueprint to design the happiness in your life. And Tambry Harris is a transformational coach who guides survivors to examine limiting beliefs, find strength in their unique gifts and abilities, and claim a wholehearted, meaningful life. Ladies, I can't wait to get into this discussion. Annie, you're going to start off the party today. Tell us about the chapter that you wrote for this book.
Okay, so I had the honor of writing chapter 7 called Be Still: The Healing Power of the Pause. And I'm writing from the angle of not an actual survivor of child sexual abuse, but a parent of survivors of child sexual abuse, which brings forth a different angle of not just processing all of the emotions and the feelings, but having to navigate the various steps of everyone's well-being after the fact and trying to manage everyone else's healing. I'm not a very creative person or outspoken person. I'm not very artistic. I tend to go inward a lot, which can make it hard to understand the best way to really navigate a situation like this. Instead of looking for ways to get all of my feelings out, the main focus I really was able to do was learn how to steady myself and basically get off the roller coaster of all of the different hits that come every day, the different emotions that my daughters were experiencing, the legal aspect from the criminal, the family. I mean, it comes at you from all directions. And it's almost like this sense of panic inside you that you can't get rid of, and you're unable to settle. And then you're unable to even really be present for the good moments or create those good moments. And so I just started really trying to focus on slowing my responses down, pausing, realizing that there is more to it than what's happening in this moment for me and my children. For me, I have a very strong faith in God. For others, it could be a connection to the universe or the earth or whatever, just the idea that there is a bigger picture and things are flowing and happening, and I don't have to jump on everything every second, figure it all out, and just really, I think it's very, very helpful for people who are navigating traumatic situations to figure out how to slow themselves down and just wait. It ends up being okay usually if you can just power through and let go a little bit of all of the control.
Thank you, Annie. I particularly appreciate starting today's interview with you because that's where I've been, and I was lucky enough to be able to read this book as I was moving through every kind of thing that you just talked about. So, what a gift. So, thank you all, and especially for your chapter, Annie, to help me remember some of those things because it's hard to remember on your own when you're in the middle of it. You need the reminders to pause. And I will just say, everything that you just said was so true for me. There's a whole life going on around the trauma that is happening. And in between, and all the moments in between the actions you have to take, there's a life that you're living. And sometimes it's hard. You forget that those moments count probably even more than those other ones. And that if you would wake up in it and realize, you are in the moment of a miracle, and with awareness, you get the choice in that moment. So, so thank you for that. And thanks for speaking from that perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me be part of this.
So more from Annie in a minute, you guys. LaQuisha, let's hear about your amazing chapter.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored to be in this space with so many powerful people. Oh my goodness. Especially grateful to hear from a mom who recognized what was happening with her children. That's where I tell my story from. I wrote chapter 2, which is called Becoming a Confident Canvas, Creating During the Healing Journey. And I have for 20 years advocated against this cause. Once I found my own voice, and I have used art as a vehicle for supporting myself and helping others support themselves in their healing process. But part of my story involves me not being believed and the struggle behind that. And so in chapter 2, when you do read it, it will sound a bit symbolic because I have healed and restored my relationship with my mother. But it is important for other parents to hear how important it is for them to believe and hear and listen to their children. But I have also had the honor of being a board member for Stop the Silence. So I've worked very closely with Dr. Pamela Pine. And I also was the international spokesperson for them for a few years in the past, traveling all the way to Switzerland to help young girls from other countries. I am the reigning Mrs. Maryland International. And so I use pageantry to open the door to these very difficult conversations. People can't believe when they see someone with a crown and sash that they could have gone through what I did. And so I'm just incredibly grateful to be a part of this project because I believe it's just a book full of healing. And I'm so excited about offering this to people that I love and care for.
Oh, so many thank yous to you, to all of you, seriously, for who you are and what you're doing in the world and all of the different amazing and unique ways that you're doing it. I want to back up to something that you said that I think it's just coming up over and over, and that is the whether or not somebody is believed.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was it was instantaneous. I didn't have any doubts. It was more about like how fast I was going to call the police or call somebody. But this is not the case. And I've heard with many others, I've heard so many times stories that about not being believed, and that makes me really sad. What else do you want to say about that, LaQuisha?
I have been compelled to do this work because as an educator, I work in Baltimore City in Maryland, and I kept hearing my own story coming back to me from my students, and it was quite disturbing. And so I almost felt like if I don't do or say something, that I was doing a disservice to all those young people that I knew would have those struggles that I had growing up. And so while it can be incredibly difficult for a parent to adopt this situation, it's also incredibly important for the parent to hold their child's hand through the recovery. I think it's harder for a parent when they don't believe their child, because now you have to restore the relationship potentially when the child is harmed through the disbelief, the pain of the trauma. It was just so many things that come down the pipe as a result of non-belief. And so I try to support parents around that as well. Thank you for asking, Laura.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment that you made. It's harder to not believe. I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about that before, and you're so right. I want all parents out there to know that this is an awareness game, and when you're in the moment of hearing something horrifying, nobody wants to believe that that is possible. And
Right.
so everything in your body and mind is going to be triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just ask everyone to take that deep pelvic bowl breath first before you react, before you respond, and understand, the love that you have for your child first.
Yes.
Before the reaction. And again, I think this theme of pausing is coming up today, which I like.
Yes.
I like that. LaQuisha, thank you. Leanne, tell us about your chapter.
Well, thank you. I have to echo what the other ladies are saying. It is just an honor to be here with everyone. And before we came on, we were talking about how important it is to know that we're not alone.
Yes.
So I just want to call attention to that. So my chapter is chapter 20, and I talk about forgiveness. So forgiveness for me really was to release me. I found that, you hear that before. You've heard, forgiveness isn't about them, it's about you. Well, it really is about you. And once you have been able to forgive, and forgive doesn't get them off the hook, they're still responsible for their actions. But when you're able to find that level of forgiveness, the freedom that came from it, for me, was emotional moment, gigantic. All of a sudden, it was like I was able to move forward in life. So it's a process, it's a chip. I like to refer it as a cabbage. And a friend of mine recently told me that, in French, they call each other little cabbage. It's a term of endearment. So if we call it a cabbage, it's an endearment because it's part of us. It's what made us who we are, and we're remarkable people because of it. But also, a cabbage isn't an onion. A cabbage doesn't make you cry. A cabbage doesn't have symmetrical layers. You peel off a layer and you get to see a little bit of something different, but a lot of what was still there is still there. So it isn't something that feels huge and scary. It's just a soft layer. It's just a little piece. So that's what I like to refer it to. So I'm referring to forgiveness as a cabbage.
I love it. Who knew that we would be talking about cabbage today? Okay. But forgiveness, I am going to back you up just for a minute there, because I'm so grateful to you authors who bring this topic up of forgiveness, because I think it takes a large amount of healing and reflection and integration and to get to the point where you can actually talk about forgiving the person that harmed you. And you already said it, you do it for yourself. You're not doing it for anyone else, and it's not getting anyone off the hook. But honestly, I believe that healing journey that people have to go through has to do with coming back to the place of forgiveness, so that your own vessel doesn't have to hold the pain, anger, trauma, etc. What else do you want to say about that?
Well, I agree. When you hold that all in, it just festers. So by letting it out, that was gigantic. And being able to read a book like this and to find the practices to let that out and do the practices that speak to you is going to help alleviate that, to let it flow through. And then it doesn't feel like an avalanche. It's more like just a little pressure point comes out and another little pressure point. And I think those are the best steps to take for healing, because they're not overwhelming.
Yeah, nice. And I like that ideal a lot. And I'm going to forever think of a cabbage now. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Tambri, tell me about your amazing chapter.
Thank you, Laura. I've been listening, and I love kind of being at the end, because my story is somewhat about the being still and the finding my voice and the peeling back the layers of the cabbage. I love it too. So my chapter is chapter 17, and it's called The Embodied Path to Truth, Healing with Mindful, Empowering Questions. And for me, my story is a little different than some because I repressed my memories for 30 years. And so my body screamed loudly at me in the middle of a big corporate event where I was in this like training event, and I end up having a panic attack because of a demonstration that's being given. And it's interesting when I was listening to LaQuisha and talking about kind of we may appear like we've got it all together. I appeared to have it all together, and there was so much woundedness underneath. And so that experience, my body coming forward, and that's why when I wrote my chapter, it was so important for me to really claim the importance of tapping into your body's wisdom, because as my therapist told me, your mind may forget, but your body will remember. And so it was my body's wisdom and knowledge that actually helped me move through my healing process. And what I would say is that for me, I created a mask at a very young age. And this mask was protective, but yet it inhibited my true self, my authentic self from coming forward. And so needing to go underneath the mask and peel the layers of the mask back to be able to see that beautiful, authentic soul that had been suppressed all these years. And one of my big issues was worthiness, and that was the whole proving myself through all these achievements, and beginning to understand that, oh my gosh, I have just worthiness innate within me. And that, I think that is such an issue for so many survivors, is to realize that they have have this just innate beauty and innate worthiness that's just waiting for them to tap into. And so as I was listening to the be still part, and that is part of my practice, is you got to learn to be still and embrace your body, because many of us feel like our bodies aren't safe because they were violated at such a young age. And so beginning to embrace your body through various practices and beginning to ask questions so that that knowing of those some of those beliefs that are holding you back, so that they can emerge, you can look at them, you can work through them to be able to move forward into a space of freedom, is what my hope is for every person. And I think Leanne was the one talking about how, we tell our stories and then we offer practices. And I love that about this book, because it's not only encouraging stories, but really giving you tools to be able to move forward into your thriving self.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot in what you just said. There's the worthiness piece. Yes, with an exclamation point to that one. But the questions thing turns me on, you guys, because when you can change from a fear to curiosity,
Yes.
then everything changes. Your whole perspective changes. And I love the questions. I love the big questions. What else do you want to say about that piece, Tambry?
And I think so many times these beliefs that are within us, we don't question them. The I must stay small was one of mine. And I finally got past that. And, here I am being able to have my voice and not be small anymore, but being curious about, where did that come from? Is it true? I think that's one of my favorite things, is when you have these unhealthy limiting beliefs that might be holding you back, asking yourself, is that true? Where did that come from? And kind of rewiring, what would it look like to flip it? That's one of the things I love doing, is flipping that. So what if the answer is, I no longer have to stay small? What does that mean? Or I'm not allowed to show up, or I have to be there for everyone else. Maybe the answer is, no, I need to be there for me. And is that okay? So yes, asking those questions that help us go deeper to understand, the how much we're held back by again tapping into that authentic, beautiful self that we all have, is just so important.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you, Tambry. Thank all of you. I'll give you all one huge thank you, not just for saying yes to this project, but for stepping up to the challenge I gave you all, which was, share a vulnerable, real story. And then in these chapters, just explaining for our readers, you're going to get through the story to the place where these authors are stepping up as the master teachers they are, and they're going to help you through a practice that is a practical experience that you can have from the pages of the book. And I'm so proud of you all for doing that so brilliantly, because it's one thing to teach somebody. You guys talk and teach all day long, but it's quite another to get it in black and white in a printed version that makes sense and flows and feels good and really expresses, what you wanted it to express. And you all did that so well. This book is such a gift. So I'm going to slide over to LaQuisha for the next question that I'm coming around to all of you with. This topic in general, thriving after child sexual abuse, this is a tough topic. And I think that normalizing the conversations around this topic is part of how we're addressing it. It's part of how we do this and how we, move toward prevention. LaQuisha, what's important about that to you, about normalizing these conversations?
Wow. So I think it's normal for this to happen, right? Like, we know that sexual abuse is occurring at alarming numbers, ongoing, has been for centuries, and that's normal. Why can't we talk about it? And so that's incredibly frustrating for me when people dismiss the conversation, dismiss your feelings, the feelings of survivors, and even all the way down to, I hope it's okay to share this, our awareness months don't even get the kind of traction that some of the others do, right? So like April is Sexual Abuse Awareness Month, and that's why I'm wearing teal, by the way. It's our awareness color. But, I find that, I get more support during that month, but there's other months where everybody's wearing pink, everybody's wearing purple or whatever. And so if we were in a space where we could be more open to this conversation, I think our young people, because we're specifically talking about child sexual abuse, would be more open to saying, this is hurting me, or this is something that's happening that I don't think is supposed to, and I know I'm supposed to tell someone. But because we're so closed off to the conversation, it's closing off our children. And it's incredibly alarming, the numbers. 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys before the age of 18. That's too many. So this conversation needs to be normal.
Yes.
Can I add something? I
Please.
think it's also not just for people being able to tell their experiences or maybe come forward with something they've been afraid to come forward with, but the actual healing process itself, especially in the younger victims and the children. So yeah, I really think one of the things that is really harmful for one of my daughters, one of the problems that she struggles with the most, is she feels like she is the only person who feels the way she feels. And it is so isolating, and it's adding to the anger and the confusion. And if she could really understand that there are lots of people, probably people that she knows, that she's near, that are in her family or in our neighborhood, just not just the being able to speak, but the being able to feel like somebody might understand you, I think would be very, very powerful for the children who are trying to move past this.
Yes,
But
for
even
sure.
her feeling, even in how she feels, if we don't have people speak out, she won't hear what she's looking for, So like, I think if we can help build the courage of survivors, especially our young ones, that's the kind of empowerment that your daughter needs to see and hear, right? So like when she hears on social media, that's where they all are, I survived this too. It'll take her out of that space of feeling alone, I think it's a full circle, actually, Annie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and isolation is part of how this is kept secret. It's these feelings of shame are part of why the conversations don't become more normalized. And so I think also, of course, we could be talking here for 3 hours on any one of the questions that we picked today, right? Because they're deep. And there's a lot of psychology, there's a lot of study, there's a lot of things about all of this. Leanne, what do you want to add to this about normalizing the conversation? And remember to unmute, girl.
Sorry.
You're good.
I think what's so great is that we are talking about it, because the more we talk about it, then even the people who have already been through an experience are going to talk about it. And the people who are doing the activity are maybe going to stop and think a little bit more, which will help to LaQuisha's point. I don't think it's going to stop, but I think we could slow it down by talking about it. Hey, listen, if I do this and they're going to talk about that, that's going to affect me at work, or that's going to affect me with my relationship at home, or that's going to change my marriage, or whatever, whoever and whatever. I think that will also help be a part of it. So I almost see us as being like cutting edge. I like to listen to Abraham and Esther, and she talks about things about being at the cutting edge. I think we're at the cutting edge. We're at the cutting edge of making this normal. That's why this book is so important. And that's why these videos and these interviews are so important, because we're bringing this out and saying, hey, guess what? It happened to me. And you're not alone, and you can survive this. And it can actually turn into a beautiful experience, but it doesn't have to be for everybody. And we can slow it down, and we can provide those tools. I think what we're doing is just immense. And like, I'm just sitting here in awe that I get to be a part of it.
It is. I love thinking about us on the cutting edge of this. We're on the cutting edge of this kind of courage. And yeah.
Like, people are just starting to talk about things like, I'm not worthy. I was watching a TikTok video yesterday of a woman who got up and said, you know what, I'm tired of not feeling good about myself. And, she just, she was a little overweight. She wasn't eating right. I mean, it wasn't like anything big, but it was big. It was big for her. And she got up there and she talked about it, and the support that she got. I mean, she posted it like 24 hours before and already had like tens of thousands of followers and thousands of comments. And I thought, that's what we're doing here. It's the same thing. And I just think that's beautiful.
Yes, for sure. Tambry, how about you? What do you want to add to this?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really emphasize, I talk about stopping the secrecy, the silence, and the shame. And the fact that so many times this is like a secret, we can't share it. And then I think, and it kind of gets back to LaQuisha's point around, the fact that this whole topic doesn't get the attention. The fact that in this case, the victims are the ones that are being shamed is just egregious. And so, really trying to speak into that, the atrocity of that. And so I think about, Leanne just now saying about the worthiness piece. And so, yeah, if we're sitting with a bunch of shame, we are going to feel unworthy. And so, seeing other people being vulnerable to come out and speak their truth and find their voice and encourage, I think that helps others begin to be vulnerable and say that. And I will tell you, when I first started, I talked about my awareness starting late, and then I'm like trying to put the pieces together because my whole world got turned upside down. And I went to a cousin and said, help me with some of these pieces because I'm really, really struggling. And the answer was, Tambry, let the past be the past. Okay. So, shaming within my own family, because it's like, how dare you begin to ask these questions, and how dare, and long story short, years later, he ended up coming back to me, and I found out that he had also been sexually abused. So he was wanting his past to be the past, and me even naming it created that discomfort in him. So, but he did come around. So I guess that's the positive in that. But for me, it's trying to alleviate the shame and the secrecy that people hold within them. And we were talking about the body, and oh my goodness, holding those secrets and that pain inside of you, it will come out in other physical ways. So if there's no other reason to begin to really share and express, know that it will physiologically help you heal by doing so.
Yeah, I will back that up and say that's a for sure. These things are deeply connected, mind, body, deeply connected. And so that holistic health is important. Looking at that whole big picture about what you're doing to help yourself is also going to be physiological, physical, once you address some of those emotions and feelings and your mental health. Um, Okay, so Leanne, I'm going to start with you for this one. I've seen the terms victim, survivor, and thriver now. Is it important to you to stop using victim as a label? What are your thoughts about the labels?
I don't think society is ready to let go of the label. I would like to see a few things being renamed. I think we can find some better names for those things, but I'm not sure what they are. I'm just on board for changing them. But I think that right now society recognizes those labels, so they're current from that aspect. But I think we could find something more positive, something that just feels like just a softer, better. Like victim sounds harsh.
Yep, I appreciate that. I think that they are what we have and they are what people know, so we use them. Tambry, what do you want to add to that? What about the labels?
For me, I think that, we are victimized. So I think there is some reality to that term. But then for me, I think so many of us get stuck in survivor mode. And so we have maybe done some therapy work, but we're still stuck in these limiting beliefs. And so that's why I feel really passionate about encouraging survivors to move to thriving and know that being in the survivor stage is not the end. There's so much more that's available. And so really kind of encouraging everyone along that healing continuum and knowing that thriving is possible is important. So I'm okay with the terms. Maybe there are some better ways to say it, but to me, they illustrate a continuum of healing.
I like that too. You don't want to be stuck in any of these. You can have the healing process help you move forward through those, and whatever you're calling them, they have feelings to them, and people can understand that they don't need to be stuck in victimhood and the feelings that go along with being a victim. Annie, how about you on this one with the labels? What's important to you?
So I actually think it's important to have an array of words that people can use to describe themselves. I understand that victim can be viewed as taking away the power from the person who's left behind dealing with this, but I also think survivor can sometimes gloss over the negative parts of it. Um, Survivor sounds more intentional and positive and strong, and all of that is good at some point. But for someone who isn't feeling any of those things yet, or who is just starting to navigate this process, they don't feel like a survivor in that moment, and that term at that point might not be appropriate for them. So I think it is important to be able to keep victim as relevant and an option for somebody describing their experience, and survivor and thriver and just all of these different ways, because not everybody identifies with one part of that process. And I think it's really important that people be able to describe what they are experiencing and going through.
And
Annie, tag teaming today. I agree with you 100%. And I appreciate you bringing that out because everybody doesn't feel that yet. Laura, may I say that on February 18th, I wrote this Facebook post. It's very quick. I'm going to read it to you all because I come from a community of people who speak about this, and they're so quick to dismiss the term survivor. They're like, no, we're conquerors now. We're thrivers now. Listen, this is what I wrote. Please also celebrate being a survivor. To be one means to continue to live or exist, especially in spite of danger or hardship. The key word, to continue. To continue means to persist. Everyone didn't, nor has the strength to do so. Am I thriving after domestic violence? Yes. Am I conquering after sexual abuse? Yes. But surviving is also worthy of recognition. please don't dismiss my persistence. And I had to read that because people think they're so into empowering others. They're like, push that to the side. Nah, sis, I need that. I survived this. It was hard. And I so appreciate Annie, because I'm thinking about your children right now and how they may not even feel like they've gotten to this point yet. So we need to
Right.
keep all the terms. We got the people who haven't felt like they fully survived yet. We got the survivors who are like, I made it through. And we got the thrivers who are like, I'm past making it through. I'm ready to save the world. It's okay for all three to coexist.
That's such a great way to sum up everything that we just said about all of the labels. I love that. And I think also asking people, I think about my own daughter. I think that I would like to ask her, hey, you've heard all these things flown at you. How are you feeling right now about all that? Do you identify with any of the labels? And just really, rather than picking and choosing what we think we're going to use in terms of the words or the labels, but just asking that person, what they feel and what stage they're in, and if they're ready to conquer the world yet or not, right?
And I think there's another piece to that, Laura. There's also the part where sometimes you feel like you're a conqueror, and other days you feel like you're a survivor.
Yeah. Very true. Can change day to day, can change hour to hour. Heck, that's in normal life too, and with no matter what we are going through.
Yes.
It's good to go with the flow and honor the change and where you are in the moment, because that is all we have anyway, is the current moment to be aware and feel alive and feel what we feel, Okay, ladies, I'm gonna hit you with a complicated couple of things on this last go around. There's a couple things on my mind, and Tambry, I'm gonna start with you for this. So first thing is that, and I wish I had the actual statistic. There are a couple of you who might actually know it, but there are a very high number of these cases, like 90 percentile. In the 90 percentile, the abuse is not by a stranger. And so I think it's really important to talk about that. And the other piece is grooming. It's a topic I wished I had known more about and been more aware of what goes down with that. So I could have been a little smarter and seen it. And if you don't have those conversations on a regular basis and there is nobody around you talking about it, then you just don't know what you don't know. So again, Tambry, I know I hit you with a lot there. It's usually not a stranger. And what about that grooming? What do you want to talk about there? What do you think the thing that's the most important for our listeners to hear is?
Well, first of all, that's my story. So you've got somebody that you're looking at right now who experienced that. And as a child, I had a lot of chaos around me. And so this person, I think that a lot of times they seek us out because they know that we are hungry for attention and hungry for love. And so I felt special, and so then trying to uncouple that in my healing around, oh my gosh, how inappropriate that. I mean, all the different things was a really, really big deal for me. And so yes, it was somebody very close to me, easy access, and had access to other family members, and did that. And so back to, if we were honest and open and understand, like having conversation about this, then maybe some of us would have been spared, right? And so I think it's so important. And the other thing that I would say is that I later found out that this person had been sexually abused himself. And so, I think about the generational stuff that happens, the fact that some don't heal and then it happens. And so, and oh, by the way, esteemed member of the community. Okay. And so in my chapter, I talk about, he was good friends with Billy Graham kind of thing, Reverend Billy Graham. So, you've got all of that going on. So yes, raising awareness around what grooming is, having eyes open available to children who need that insight and that look into the not feeling worthy, I think goes back to not feeling seen for me. And he saw me and he took advantage of that. So have a huge passion and heart on that topic. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Tambri, for sharing. I think every single time we share a nugget about this, then it might open an eye. And you're making me want to say again, it's about, I think part of it has been about arming my kids with the practice of awareness and their own intuition and trusting what they feel and what that even means. I know I didn't learn those skills until much later in my adulthood. And I think if parents, they need to connect themselves and learn it for themselves so they can model it and also verbalize that to their kids. What are you feeling right now? Does that feel good? Does that feel bad? I'm curious. I want to know what you feel, right? Because I can't tell you how you feel. You have to connect with that place inside that understands that language for yourself. And I think it's such a big gift that we give people. And you all you're dropping such nuggets of awareness today. So it made me think about that. Annie, how about you on this, between the idea of it's usually not a stranger and the grooming? What's important? What do you want people to know?
So I think one of the things that would happen if this starts being a normalized conversation is that people wouldn't be so offended if you mentioned something. So if you see a family member tickling your child or something where it looks like maybe your child's a little uncomfortable and maybe it's just kind of an iffy boundary, how many of us have already been taught that we shouldn't say anything and it's harmless and it's totally fine? But what if we could just say, and it wasn't an insult, I'm not insinuating that you're trying to sexually molest my child or that you're grooming my child. I'm just saying that this particular thing seems to be making her a little uncomfortable. What if we could just say that and it not become some big confrontation where half the family's mad at you because you've called them a child molester or whatever the case is? Because there are plenty of things that don't lead to actual sexual abuse. There are plenty of people who are just disconnected and maybe not realizing the harm that they're doing or the discomfort that they're causing. But then there's also the grooming. There's the gazillion little things that happen along the way, that happen in front of people, away from people, or over the course of months or years. A child is taught this behavior is normal. The people around them are taught this behavior is normal. And then it has opened the door for the next steps. And I just think it would be so powerful if it was okay to talk about the things at the very beginning. That might be those steps. They might not be those steps, but it doesn't matter. Let's just go ahead and talk about it and make sure everybody realizes this needs to stop.
I like the term iffy boundaries because that's inside of me, it was so subtle, it was so iffy, and because it wasn't really inappropriate, I was ignoring it, or people will tend to go, oh, that's just the way he is or she is. And so I like that idea. And you're also making me think that sometimes an overreaction is your sign that there's a problem. Someone who can't have the conversation, they immediately spew back at you and almost too much. Yes, I see a lot of nods. So that's awareness. And that's, one of the things that I think is so important is just understanding that what you're seeing and hearing can be signs all around you, and then to trust your gut on it. Yeah. LaQuisha, what do you want to add to this conversation we're having here?
Well, first, I'm going to add that statistic you were looking for is 93%. According to Brown University's research, 93% of perpetrators are someone that the child knows. And I actually recently posted it on Facebook as well. I'm always trying to advocate in some way, and this worked out in my favor today. Thank God.
I knew you were going to come through with the statistic, my statistic gal. Thank you.
But I want to just add this part. I think this is why the education of all people is important. I think sometimes when we come into these spaces, we're so into, I want to help the survivors, or I just want to help the parents. Everybody needs to be well educated on what grooming looks like, what the signs look like in children, teachers, church members. Like, we can all be on the lookout, but we have turned into a society where we're into our electronics, we're into our followers. There's so many things that's distracting us right now that can take us even away from, you said you ignored, like, oh, that's just how he is. But we're even ignoring that now in our society. Like, we're not even paying attention to that. And if you look up and notice something, it just should be, you should be educated enough where you would be able to call it out. And I would like to see more children educated on what grooming looks like. Because if I would have known that like Tambry, the man who molested me as a child, who was an upstanding member of the community as well, that no one would believe had done that to me, if somebody would have told me that he shouldn't have bought me all those gifts, or if somebody would have blocked it or said, why are you getting her shoes? Why are you taking her back in a room to give her a gift? You know, like, those would have been things that would have flagged me. But my self-esteem was so low, I was just so grateful that somebody paid attention to me. So I want that education to happen with everybody in our communities.
Yes, I really appreciate you talking about that one particular example. And those are the types of stories that we're hearing. And of course, this book is going to help you with some of those examples so that you start to understand. And when you see them, then you'll recognize them. It's all awareness. And that's so important. Okay, Leanne, you're going to wrap us up today. What do you want to add about all of this? It's hard to go last on this one, but I think there's more to be said.
I'll bring up the caboose.
Okay.
So I agree. I think that education is going to be key. It's going to be, letting people know what it is to look for. I mean, I think of the subtle things that I dropped that no one picked up. I think of those things that were just glossed over, and, people they weren't ready to talk about it, and they didn't know what to do with it if they did find it. Like, I don't know what to do. I suspect this, but what do I do? So I was in a position years ago. My career was a dental hygienist, and I'm a required reporter as a dental hygienist if I suspected something. And it was really kind of fun to be in that position, to be able to say, something, maybe we should look into something here. And there were times that I brought something up that had to be followed up on. So it's having been through it, I guess maybe I saw some things that perhaps other people hadn't seen. But that being said, I think that if we do educate people on what to look for, that will help. And educate people on, if you think something's happening to you, that it's okay to say something. So I think just opening that door.
Yes, definitely. Leanne, LaQuisha, Annie, Tambry, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everybody. Thanks, ladies. So for our listeners, I know that you might have heard something today that resonated. You might have woken up to one of those little pieces of awareness. Perspective can be a life changer. So scroll on down to the show notes, and I have all of our authors hooked up with their websites there. These books are much more than a book. We have a community of very caring, supportive experts who are generously there for you to answer the question, or to help you take that next step, or to help by listening and believing you. So drop down and click on the websites, explore, and take the next step, especially if you are really wanting and needing that support. And if you are excited about our book, then you can come join the book launch party that we're going to have. It's going to be on March 10th from 10 a.m. Eastern. And I'm going to gather with all of the Stop the Silence authors that day. We're going to celebrate the launch of our book. I've got all of the information down below in those show notes for you. And if you happen to be listening to this interview anytime after that date, then that means you can hop over to Amazon and grab your copy of Stop the Silence. Lastly, today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone. Thank you, ladies.